Welcome, everyone. We're going to be getting started in just a minute, just waiting for a few more folks to join. Very happy that you're here. Okay, I think we are good to go. Welcome, everyone, to this very, very timely and important conversation, Educator-Led Movement Building, Lessons from Grassroots Leaders. I am so happy to be here with all of you today and with our amazing lineup of panelists. I'm Jessica Sager. I'm the co-founder and chief executive officer of All Our Kin. At All Our Kin, we have the honor to partner with family childcare educators in their critically important work of caring for children and families. And we have a dual mission. We work with family childcare educators because of their transformative impact on the lives of children in the greatest need. And we work with family childcare educators because we deeply believe that educators deserve good pay, benefits, access to community and social supports, and we have made it our life's work to stand side by side with them. We work at All Our Kin to help educators set up their businesses. We bring them the latest knowledge about child development, and we help them build thriving businesses. Together with educators, we also do work around policy and advocacy, and you're going to be hearing about that in just a few minutes from our amazing lineup of panelists. We work directly with about 1,000 educators across Connecticut and New York City, and thousands more through partnerships in 24 states across the country. So, family childcare educators on this call, I welcome you. Partners, I welcome you. I'm very excited to have this timely conversation. Our panelists today are going to introduce themselves, so I'll just say their names very quickly. We have Marina Rodriguez, Jade Thomas, and Nichelle Waddell, all here to share their experiences with you. And I'm just going to say very briefly why I think this topic is so critically important. For too long, the field of early care and education have been shaped by those who are not living the experience of caregiving every day. And it is when educators lead and inform that we are able to create equitable systems, that we are able to create efficient systems, and we are able to create systems that actually work for educators, children, and families. So I'm very excited to share All Our Kin's perspective on how to do that with you now. I'm going to turn it over to our moderator and dear friend, Chrisanne Gayl, who is the Chief Strategy and Policy Director at the Trust for Learning. Chrisanne, over to you.
Thank you so much, Jessica. I really appreciate it. And I'm very excited to be a part of this conversation today. At Trust for Learning, our mission is to expand high-quality, ideal learning environments based on the principles of ideal learning for all children prenatal to age 8. I hope that you are all familiar with these principles, which start with a commitment to equity-based decision-making. They call out the importance of play and a child-centered approach, and a commitment to educator development. All of them are articulated on the screen in the wheel on the screen in front of you. At the Trust, we also recognize the important role that movement building and policy work plays in achieving ideal learning environments for educators, children, and families. We are happy to support partners such as All Our Kin in these efforts. And the Trust is so happy to host this webinar to share their stories and strategies with the broader early childhood field. For today's conversation, I will be posing questions to each of our panelists, but there will also be time at the end for discussion for them to answer audience questions. So please include your questions in the Q&A tab located in the Zoom toolbar, along with your name and your organization, and we will try to address these toward the end of our time together. We are also recording this session, So if you have to step away, please know that you will be receiving a recorded version of the session afterwards. Also, feel free to use the chat box if you want to engage with other participants and attendees on this webinar today. You might want to just give us a call out, a shout out to where you're located across the country. We would enjoy that. And now I'd like to take a moment for our amazing panelists to introduce themselves and for them to share why they are passionate about this topic. Marina, let's go ahead and start with you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Marina Rodriguez, and I am very excited to be part of this conversation and to be in space and time with all of you this morning or this afternoon, depending on where you are in the nation. I am passionate about this work, and I came to the early childhood field through my son. I like to always thank his Head Start teacher for inviting me to volunteer in his classroom. And I like to thank him for being part of my life and for really opening up the journey for me to enter the early childhood workforce. My son is now 30 years old. That was over 25 years ago. And I am still here. And I'm passionate about this work because this work is about, I have a personal stake in this work, right? This work is about my life story also, because my family and I were able to move up and out of poverty through supporting each other and supporting the care of each other's children. So I'll stop there and I'll turn it over to Jade, maybe.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Marina. Hi, everyone. My name is Jade Thomas, and I work as the Connecticut Policy Associate at All Our Kin. Since joining the team in 2018, I've helped support the organization's policy and advocacy efforts. My favorite part of the work is building connections with and uplifting the voices of educators. I'm passionate about this topic because educators' stories and voices matter. And if we want to truly change our childcare system, we have to follow their lead.
Nichelle, do you want to wrap us up?
Yes, good morning. My name is Nichelle Waddell, and I'm a state licensed child care educator with a group daycare in Stamford and a child care center in Norwalk. I am very passionate about this topic and very vested in it because at one time I was denied the opportunity to expand my child care program by the local zoning board due to one disgruntled number. At the time, expanding my program would have allowed me during the pandemic and after to care for 12 children instead of 6 children. I was serving essential workers and their families, but again, due to the restrictions placed on me by the local zoning board, I was denied and later had to incur a lot of costs to fight through that. That allowed me to become very passionate about this and very vested in making changes to help support educators.
Thank you, and thank you for sharing those stories. Obviously, this work is so personal to each of you, and just very grateful and appreciative for you to take the time today to be sharing with us your stories and experiences. So let's go ahead and get started. Jade, let's start with you. So All Our Kin is a direct service organization whose advocacy grows out of your direct partnerships with educators. Could you speak a little bit about the organization's perspective and history operating at the intersection of programming and advocacy?
Yeah, absolutely. All Our Kin first came to be as a response to the oppressive nature of welfare reform. So the org has always existed in relationship with advocacy. Our direct service offerings remain at the core of what we do. And so much of that work is being responsive to the needs of educators. Family childcare educators are doing amazing work with children and families. The organization started to notice, however, that educators were running into barriers that couldn't be addressed through programming. It had to do with the systems that educators were interacting with. For example, in Bridgeport, Connecticut, family child care programs were being excluded from after school drop off. In the city at that point, there weren't structures in place to offer transportation to children receiving after school care in home-based settings. And all our kin direct program staff recognized the inequity and successfully advocated for the inclusion of family child care. That type of situation wasn't a rarity, unfortunately. Our educators were often facing challenges that required administrative or legislative change. So we started to think about how we could support educators through systems change, working to create a system that supports educators and the families and children in their communities.
Thank you. Really appreciate that context. Well, when we think about successful movements starting at the grassroots level in one community, in one state, and then inspiring a national movement, the Morning Without Childcare is a fantastic example. We have Marina, who is personally involved in launching that. So Marina, can you tell us how that effort came to be?
Yes, absolutely, Chrisanne. Thanks so much for asking. It really started with a call to action from one of our colleagues in the early childhood workforce in Connecticut. It was a fiery email that shook all of us. Immediately, I sent an internal email to ask how we were going to support Georgia Goldberg from Hope Child Care Center. And the internal response was, let's get to work. Of course, this happened within the context of our larger coalition that already existed and that we were all part of. So the Morning Without Childcare was truly a collaboration from all corners of the sector. The email from Georgia was really a response to the urgent need for more money in the childcare budget to support the early childhood workforce who showed up during the harshest times of COVID. The gathering was truly just a monumental moment for all of us. We stood strongly in a united front. There were family childcare educators, staff family childcare networks like All Our Kin, center-based families, and even businesses came out. We all took a strong stance to have our voices heard. Each of us had a real personal stake in it. My personal stake in the first Morning Without Childcare that I got to speak and share my story, it was as a young parent over 17 years ago with my second son. I too had the hard choice of choosing affordability over quality. And I did not have the income to pay for the higher childcare rate for a higher quality program. And the subsidy that they were offering me was not enough to cover. And today we're still singing the same song.
Thank you, Marina. Well, one of the essential tenets of ideal learning is the power of relationships. And Marina, I want to go back to you because can you speak to how this principle undergirds the work that All Our Kin does with educators and how what you do supports and empowers educators?
Yes. Thanks, Chrisanne. I do strongly believe that All Our Kin's work and the Trust for Learning's work through the Ideal Learning Roundtable intersects at many places between the Ideal Learning principles and our values. Our alignment is so strong, and I'll give you a few examples of what that looks like at All Our Kin. One thing I've definitely heard educators say when they walk in through the door is that they walk in through the door at All Our Kin is that they feel that they belong. And this happens through, right, warm responses. I see Nichelle shaking her head, yes. This happens through warm responses, hugs, right? Being there, like honestly and truly being there and being responsive to the needs of educators. Having deep relationships, meaningful relationships don't always mean that everything is fluffy and dandy. It means that we also have to have hard conversations. It means that we have to speak about the tension when tensions rise and move through the tensions. It means that we repair in order to move in solidarity. Another really good example about how deep our connections are with the educators in the networks across cities and states is that educators have our direct number. They can reach us directly, whether it's Jade or Jess or Jenna or anyone at the org. Really, this might not sound like something important, but the relationship is so direct that they call Jessica to say, did you see this policy that came out, Jess? Or did you see this regulation? This is feeling hard for me. They call me to tell me when they want to celebrate something, or they might call Jade to express something that felt really unfair. Our relationships are grounded in intentional, relational, responsive, and reflective approaches. It's just the way of our work at all levels of the organization.
Thank you very much, Marina. So I'd like to turn to Nichelle, who's one of the educators in the All Our Kin network. So how did you originally get connected with All Our Kin? And what was the experience of Mourning Without Childcare like for you as an attendee? Can you tell us a little bit about how this campaign gave voice to educators?
I was first introduced to All Our Kin in December 2018 by my good friend Gladys Contreras. All Our Kin had helped her and her sister establish their family daycare businesses. I was so grateful to All Our Kin because I wanted to get my daycare program approved and open, but I had no idea how to do it. My husband was out of work and I had 2 young children at home. I was scared and I did not have the knowledge or the resources of how to go about setting up my own program. When I went to All Our Kin, like Marina said, they welcomed me with open arms and I felt like I was a part of a family coming in the doors. I remember going there with my son in his stroller, dragging the stroller up the stairs. And I remember sitting at the table with Angela, like, ready to cry because I was just, desperate. I didn't know what to do. And I remember Angela said to me, Nichelle, don't worry. It's going to be okay. You're going to get your license. We're going to get you open. Don't worry. Angela, helped me so much. Everyone there, All Our Kin, the educators there helped me so much. Even so, when I was about to have my first walkthrough from OEC, from the state, it was a Tuesday. And here I remember ladies came from working all day, educators in their own program, and they came to my home at 6:30 at night to do a mock walkthrough to ensure that I would be able to pass my inspection. And I really appreciated that because here they had worked all day, 11 hours, and yet they still did this just to help me, just because I was a fellow educator, trying to get my program open. With All Our Kin, I knew I was now a part of a family. I could call them, like Marina said, I had the telephone numbers, I could text them and they would respond and get back to me. I was, so going from that support and seeing that, I wanted to give back. And I was more than happy to pay it forward. And so when we had now that morning, I was so happy to support the Mourning Without Childcare and, to support that campaign alongside All Our Kin and my fellow educators who have been such a support to me. I felt it was a powerful experience that we had all invested so many months into. And it was amazing to see everyone come together to support this much needed campaign. The energy there that morning, it was infectious, and to listen to the various educators and the event organizers speak, it was life-changing for me. There were also speakers there, Erica, different speakers from All Our Kin and educators from All Our Kin. They reminded us that we must continue fighting and pushing for improvement and change in childcare in Connecticut and beyond. We saw through this campaign that we are stronger united and that when our voices are heard, we do make a difference. This campaign gave voice to educators by allowing us to participate in statewide rallies and events where policymakers were able to hear our concerns. It allowed educators to advocate for changes to policies and legislation that greatly impacts our profession and our ability to serve the children and families in our care. The campaign allowed educators to engage with their local communities by building relationships with our parents, with community leaders and organizations like All Our Kin and Circle, and others who want to help educators gain support for their advocacy efforts. And we really saw it all come together and culminate and just make such a huge difference. And we felt heard.
Thank you very much for sharing that. I can definitely feel the excitement and appreciation in your voice. And it all started, I think, with that just really strong relationship between you and those at All Our Kin. And I think that's just so important too, this, when you receive such gracious support and help, you do want to pay it forward. And I definitely see and hear that in your voice. So Jade, the Morning Without Childcare campaign idea, it was eventually taken up by national organizations. Can you talk a bit about what that was like?
Oh my goodness, yes. It was so exciting to see early educators speak out and bring other advocates along with them. I mean, the pictures, the speeches from that day were so powerful. Like Nichelle said, I think so much of advocacy is feeling like a part of something, knowing that you're not alone. And we did see results. The legislature ended up approving a one-time increase of $183 million for early care and education in the state budget. And it forced policymakers to pay attention in Connecticut, but it also inspired others to act. Childcare changemakers ended up sponsoring a national day of action for childcare. Educators in Connecticut, even though they were really tired from coming out and advocating a few months before, they showed solidarity through social media. And I think it was really just a testament to the power of collective action.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It was really exciting to see that campaign catch on in other parts of the country. Well, let's shift tracks now to another campaign in Connecticut, an example of a very different set of tactics that education advocates can use to push for policy change. Jade, you were involved in the multi-year campaign to change zoning laws that created barriers to entry for home-based childcare providers. Tell us about that campaign.
Oh, yes. All our kin staff would get calls from educators looking for help navigating their local zoning process, folks who were struggling to get approval to operate from their landlords, so much so that we began to ask ourselves, how could we not only support but protect family and group childcare in the state? And so in 2018, All Our Kin, the Yale Law School, partnered to study the scope of the problem, what other states were doing to protect home-based childcare, and what we could do in the state of Connecticut. And ultimately, our answer was legislation. We came to the realization that we were experiencing a structural problem. Connecticut statute protects family childcare from burdensome zoning regulations, but those same protections didn't extend to group family childcare, which is slightly larger. Plus, state statute didn't protect home-based childcare businesses of any kind in rental properties. Landlords had the discretion to ban renters from operating programs on their property. So over the last 4 or 5 years, All Our Kin has led efforts in the state of Connecticut to try and address some of those challenges. And starting in 2019, we introduced legislation to limit the arbitrary land use regulations that were being used to deter the opening of group childcare homes. And the legislation also attempted to ensure that restrictive leases couldn't ban the operation of home-based childcare businesses. Thankfully, this year, All Our Kin, educators, and our partners were successful in passing legislation to address zoning barriers. And so in Connecticut, starting October 1st, group childcare homes must be treated as of right in residential zones in the state.
Thank you. Nichelle, I can see the big smile on your face. As you mentioned in your introduction, zoning was a big barrier for you. You were one of the educators who contributed your time and voice to these efforts. What role did centering educator voices and their experiences play in getting this over the finish line?
Well, in September 2020, I was denied the opportunity by the local zoning board forward to expand my family daycare, going from family to group daycare. And that would have allowed me to accommodate 12 children instead of 6. I was constantly waitlisted, constantly turning away families with infants, mothers trying to get back to work. And I was constantly having to just turn them away. I was denied because of my local zoning board meeting, because of one neighbor, one person out of 23 that was against me having the program. He just didn't want the cars going by his house. He, and even though he worked, he was not home, but he didn't want the cars. And he had the ability with the old local zoning laws to block me. I remember there was an occasion where a police officer came up with his wife and from Westchester with their 3-month-old baby, pleading with me to take on the little one. I could not do it because I'd been denied by the local zoning board, and I felt terrible because they wanted care for their little one, and parents want to place their children where they want. It's not by area and zoning, and it's where they feel comfortable. And it broke my heart, but it made me more determined to keep fighting. So after being denied the first time, I decided I would go back again. At first, I was very distraught, very dejected. I could not understand why, although we were all trying to work for the same thing to better serve our community, the local government and us, the child care providers, the educators, I could not understand the disconnect. But thanks again to all our kin and educators I met through all our kin, I was encouraged to go back again and to reapply. But as far as barriers, there were huge financial barriers, like Jade mentioned. The cost for an application just to apply was $1,520 non-refundable. You also needed, so I paid that twice because I went back again. You also needed a Class A2 land survey done. That was $2,600. You also needed architect sketches, $1,500. And because I was going back a second time, sometimes you also need a septic survey, $2,000. And then I was going back a second time with an attorney. That was $11,000 plus an additional $2,000 that I'll explain in a minute. So all of that money is non-refundable. I used grants I received from the state the first time around to apply. Now, at this time, as I mentioned before, my husband's out of work. I have 2 young children of my own, and I'm trying to run a good childcare program and also keep a roof over the head of my children, my family. So it was very stressful, and I just couldn't understand, but I had great support with all our kin. They stayed there, with me, helping me, Jade, and just once this came along where I could help with this bill to make it better for those who would come behind. There came a point where myself and Gladys and Dora, 2 other educators, we had all put 5 figures into this. We did not have money for this. We incurred so much debt, but it became bigger than ourselves, what Jade and the others were doing, and it was no longer about us. And we decided we wanted to make it easier and better for those who come after us so they would never have to endure this. And so I was so happy to keep toiling, keep working alongside my sisters, Jade, and just everyone there, all our kin and other wonderful organizations that were partnering with us to become successful at this. When I went back, I did get approved, but I will tell you that night, that meeting, what I did differently for my zoning meeting, I asked our like kin, I just said, would maybe 1 or 2 or 3, ladies from all our kin, educators, just support me. My lawyer said, maybe if you have 2 or 3 people. Well, once I went to all our kin and just posed this, I had 15 educators and administrators from all our kin, all on my Zoom meeting. The head of the zoning board, the ZBA, said they'd never seen anything like this. Everyone was there. There were ladies that night in the supermarket grocery shopping, but they were still on this call. Those meetings run from 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. Those ladies, they all stayed on. And this is in the middle of the work week. I think it was a Wednesday. And they were still there waiting, sitting, speaking, on behalf of my program, and also citing the childcare crisis, and shortage that we were in. I received unanimous approval that night. I was so humbled, so grateful, so touched, and just so appreciative. And it made me realize then that I'd never been a part of anything. I just never really thought about it either, but now it was a part of something great, something bigger than myself. And from there, I later, and the other educators too, we started going on each person's meeting. and doing the same thing. So we did the same thing for Gladys Contreras, who later got approved to open up a second location as a group daycare when she had initially been denied by the local building department. It's, you know, after I was approved, though, I will say local zoning placed a restriction on me. Because of that one neighbor, they said I had to shuttle all the children into my program. So now I had to have extra insurance. I had to get extra, like a separate type of approval from the OEC. They also said I could not shuttle children under 1 year old, the local zoning board. So now they're superseding the rules and regulations of the OEC. The OEC didn't even understand how they could even enforce this. And so I had to turn away 5 families with infants that first year because I could not take any children under the age of 1. They would not let me shuttle anyone under 1, and every child had to be shuttled in. I had to shuttle in 12 children. So it was very stressful. I didn't have a minivan. It was very stressful. But I'm grateful for the OEC. They really worked with me, helped me as much as they could. I had to go back with the lawyer again, incur more legal costs to have that restriction removed. So October 1st for me is a day of celebration. Because I no longer have to live under the cloud of knowing my neighbor could even still have put in a complaint against me to local government if he didn't like the traffic of cars, you know, passing in front of his home. So I'm going to celebrate on October 1st, but I want to say I just greatly appreciate all our kin, Jade, just all of the people who tirelessly put in years doing this, because it makes a huge difference for us, the educators, but most importantly to the families and the children, you know, that we're committed to serving.
Thank you, Nichelle. As you said, this campaign took years to achieve its objective. And Jade, that clearly took a lot of perseverance and hard work among educators and those at all our kin. Tell us why, in your view, from your perspective, you were successful this year in getting this passed at the state level. Was there a strategy adjustment or a new tactic that you took? What was the secret behind the victory this year?
Yeah, and it was a really long road, about 5 years, but each legislative session, we were able to learn and build support in the legislature and in the field. And I think there were several secrets behind this year's victory. The first was centering educator voices. Educators and their stories were central to the work that we did. Their experiences on the ground are what set us on that path and helped us cross the finish line. Educators every year continue to share their stories. And so this year, when the bill came around again, legislators already knew about the issue. And that was because educators, even with how busy they were, took the time to try and help legislators, their elected officials, understand what was happening on the ground. The second piece, I think, was, again, the support from the field. This year, we co-led our efforts with Connecticut Voices for Children, a research-based advocacy organization in the state, with both organizations prioritizing zoning and specifically zoning reform for family childcare. We were able to do a lot more. I think their housing expertise and our family childcare expertise paired really well. And we were also fortunate that we had the support of a number of partners, including the Connecticut Association of Human Services, the Connecticut Early Childhood Alliance, and Circle. And then I think the final piece was collaboration. We really leaned into collaboration and compromise. We met with legislators that opposed the bill to better understand what components of the proposed legislation they were on board with. We revised the bill language based on their feedback. And the bill that we put forward initially included not only zoning, but also language restricting the prohibition of family childcare and lease agreements. And in the spirit of compromise, we ultimately stripped that language away to save the bill and make those zoning changes that were, again, a very small but impactful change when it comes to not only the educators, but children and families.
Thank you very much for that sort of behind the scenes look at what was successful this year. I want to remind all of our participants on today's webinar that if you have questions for our panelists, please go ahead and put those in the Q&A, and you can find that at the bottom of the Zoom toolbar. And if you have a particular panelist that you would like to address the question to, please go ahead and specify that. We will definitely get to your questions towards the end. So Connecticut has been at the forefront of some really amazing educator organizing and advocacy efforts, as we've heard. The Morning Without Childcare and the successful passage of zoning legislation are great examples of how totally different tactics can be impactful. I wanted to take a minute, though, to focus on what these campaigns have in common and what lessons current and future advocates can take from them. Marina, let's go ahead and start with you. Can you speak to the role of emotion and values in motivating people to speak up and raise their voices?
Yes, thank you, Chrisanne. Before I move into that, I just want to elevate Nichelle one more time for your powerful story. Thank you for inspiring us. Thank you for your perseverance. Thank you for everything that you are to the workforce and primarily to the families and children that you serve. Thanks for that. I have to say that emotion, like I'm full of emotions right now. Emotions is at the center of all the work that we do. We do human to human work. Emotions, they inform how we move about the work, right? And both emotions and values are always at the center of the work that we do. So at All Art Can, we all are continuously engaging in deeply and respectful work with educators. We do it through our coaching models. We do it through our different strands of support, which include the educational strand, the policy strand, the business strand. We understand that family childcare has unique needs, and we are constantly redesigning our programs in response to the feedback that we receive from educators. And like Jess says, everything starts with relationships and shared values. In New Haven, at the Morning Without Childcare this year, we had an educator who spoke from her heart. She demanded recognition and pay for her hard work, Miss Lottie Brown. I have to mention her name. This educator has been part of the All Art Can network since its inception. And we've had tough conversations when we needed to have them because we're always listening, we're changing and adapting because we're always learning. And I have to say that Nichelle's story really triggered for me other stories of educators who've come to us about these discriminatory practices that have felt like discriminatory practices at the level of boards, but also from their own neighbors. And I do have to say that we're really intentional at All Art Can at creating that safe container to hold those personal stories, like Jade mentioned earlier. And I'll add that, you know, getting people off the sidelines, I want to think about how intentional and careful we have to be to honor our educators' culture when we think about motivating and getting people off the sidelines, because educators have a lot at stake. Educators have a lot to lose. There are educators who are immigrant women who identify as women doing this work and are immigrants into this country. And while some of us might have the privilege to not think about repercussions and consequences in the context of voicing their power through their voice and advocacy, they have to think about that, right? That is at the forefront of some of their worries. And so ensuring that we're creating a container that feels safe from this real relational place is of utmost importance to us, because their safety is first. And you know, I'll end by saying that, you know, we bring people out not by canvassing on one-off campaigns. We do it by forging deeply rooted connections with educators. We do it by honoring their personal stories. We witnessed how educators moved into action at the Morning Without Childcare, taking leadership across the state, from organizing logistically to taking center roles on the stage and demanding respect, like people like Lottie Brown and Nichelle did.
Thank you, Marina.
Mm-hmm.
Really powerful. Nichelle, as an educator, what was the spark for you to begin your advocating for change? I think I know because you were directly affected, but and you've talked to it. But maybe you could speak a little bit to what was challenging about stepping into this new role and having to balance it with your day job as a full-time educator and business owner. And to help educators become advocates, what kind of resources and tools and relationships are instrumental in making that happen?
Well, I will say the real spark, I thought it was because of what I went through, but after a while, it just wasn't that anymore. I do feel with advocacy, it has to be about more than yourself and your own story and what you're trying to accomplish, because it is hard work. It's a lot of hours and a lot of self-sacrifice. So I think it has to be about something bigger than yourself. And I remember sitting with Gladys and Dora, and we were doing a news article for the Advocate, the Stanford Advocate. And this goes to like what Jade was saying and like what Marina's saying. We just kept telling our stories to anyone that would listen. We were telling the story, like any article, anything online, any webinar, any meeting, anywhere. We kept telling, so we could be heard. And I remember sitting with their sisters, and we said, you know what, this isn't even about us anymore, because we're never going to get back the money we've spent. We're never going to erase the debt that we have. But this is about those who come after. You know, we're going to keep fighting because we're almost through the finish line now. We're about to be approved. Well, Gladys and myself, Dora never was. She was never able to get approved. She had that many neighbors against her. But we said, this will be about those who come after us. And that made us feel so good. I think with advocacy, for those who go into this, they're going to need support. They will need a lot of support from agencies, like we said, All Can and Circle, you know, Tammy at Circle and the coalition, because it's hard and it's very easy to feel isolated out here and by yourself. And that's very scary. But there's great organizations out here that will help you. There's great mentors that will lead you and guide you and will teach you. And with that, that's step one. Step two is to realize it's going to be self-sacrifice. Jade remembers how we were talking about it, how many nights I would stay up all night writing speeches, because I'm not great at speeches, you know, just trying to figure out all the numbers and the dates and just, you know, working all hours of the night after working 12 hours a day, you know, but I was committed and dedicated to stand by my word, to support, because I wanted to make things better and I wanted to make a difference. So I think educating advocates on what's going to be involved, you know, educators, what's involved in advocacy, but letting them know they have the support and the support's really there. I think that's number two. And just knowing it's bigger than yourself. It has to be about more than just you. And that just will come through the education. I think, you know, becoming more educated. So I think educators who want to go into advocacy, they need training, they need education, they need access to advocacy networks and mentors, and that's all available. There's plenty of mentors. There are excellent groups here in Connecticut, and they need to attend events, and through doing all that, they're going to learn about policy and gain that policy education, and then they'll also start engaging with their communities. And I think that's all they need. I think it may look big and overwhelming, but once you link up with one of the many great organizations that are here, you know, even today, again, All Our Kin, Circle, and the mentors, what you're going to find there with those families, you can do it. And together we can make a difference. I've never been a part of anything until now, but now I've been a part of something great. And I've seen from living it how something small, how one speech, one event, just one thing you do, you keep at it. It makes a difference when we all do it together, and now I've seen it with both campaigns.
Thank you. Appreciate you sharing that. Jade, as a policy leader, how do you build and hold a coalition together? As we've heard, these campaigns sometimes can take years of hard work before seeing a payoff. How do you sustain people's energy and commitment and sense of community inside a movement?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. And I want to answer using all our zoning work as a frame. I think that we were really lucky in that we do work in a state where there's an extremely dedicated group of individuals and organizations that are engaged in early childhood advocacy who also value family childcare. The All Our Kin team, through our direct service work, had cultivated deep relationships that helped us to bring together a group of people who felt as strongly about strengthening zoning protections for family childcare as we did. In terms of the landscape, Connecticut was and is experiencing a shortage of infant toddler slots. I think everyone that was involved understood that. And I think it's one of the reasons that folks were so committed by advocating for stronger housing and zoning protections for home-based childcare businesses. We were supporting educators, but also addressing barriers that made it difficult for programs to open and grow and serve families. And then there was also a core group of family childcare educators that were impacted by zoning in particular, who were committed to making a difference. Nichelle is one of those educators. We would be on the phone and she would tell me, whatever we have to do, I'm in. She also connected me with other educators who she thought may want to get involved. So the enthusiasm was already there, and All Our Kin was able to hold the work in a way that made it easier for educators and partners to get involved. Staff family childcare networks like All Our Kin in many ways are the sustainers of commitment, community builders, relationship builders. It's a space where people can come to feel supported. If I had to boil it down, I'd say you build a coalition by identifying the people who are directly impacted by the issue, who have a shared vision, and leveraging existing relationships within your community, and doing the work of keeping folks updated and engaged.
Thank you, Jade. Really appreciate that. So I'd like to start wrapping us up with a combination of reflection and looking forward. You all have such wonderful firsthand stories and experiences with movement building. And thank you for obviously sharing those with us today. I have a two-part question for you, but if you could try to kind of answer it fairly concisely so we can get to a few of the questions that are in the Q&A. And this is for each one of you. So the first is, what would you say to educators who want to be an active part of advocating for policy solutions in their community? How do you get started? And then the second question, what is the public policy change for early childhood education that you think will be at the forefront for you in 2024? What should folks be focusing on? And who would like to take that one first?
I'm happy to. I feel like as the policy person, I probably should jump in first here. I would tell educators that want to be a part of advocating for policy solutions in their communities, that they're the experts. That's something that a colleague at All Our Kin would say to me all the time. There's no one that has a better understanding of their experience than they do. And advocacy doesn't always yield immediate results, but it can be really empowering and many times rewarding. To get started, I would say find a staff family childcare network, an organization or coalition that is advocating for issues that matter to you, and see how you can get involved. In terms of the second part of the question, I think the public policy issue that will be at the forefront for All Our Kin in the coming year is certainly educator wages and benefits. Educators, especially family childcare educators, are deeply underpaid for the valuable work that they do. And we're hoping to be a big part of changing that.
Thank you.
Marina,
Nichelle, want to jump in?
Yes, I'll jump in and I'll have Nichelle leave us inspired with her last word. I'd like to definitely echo everything that Jade said. Educators are experts of their own context. They all have infinite potential. Educators, find a community that has your best interest in mind, a community who wants to support your leadership development. And remember, leadership is ever evolving and can take many forms. You will be unstoppable because you have everything that you need already in you. You just have to find the champions that are going to be by your side, that genuinely and deeply want to support you holistically. As the advocates that you already are, as the phenomenal educators that you will continuously grow to be, and as the strong businesses that you are. And yes, I think fair wages, this is not a sprint. This is a marathon, and we're in it. We're in it. We're training each other to stay in it. We're a collective, and our collective and our compromise is only going to get stronger, and we're here for you and with you. So just know that you definitely have a community in All Our Kin, and I'm sure you can find also a community in your local neighborhood or your local community. I'll stop there.
Nichelle?
I would say, echo what Marina and Jade are both saying. I would say support and guidance. That's the number one. You're going to need the support and guidance. It makes all the difference. Had I not walked into All Our Kin, I would not be who I am and where I am today. There are many times I kind of want to pinch myself because I just never would have imagined me having a group daycare and a center. So I'm so grateful, always eternally grateful to All Our Kin for, taking in someone like me and just seeing my heart and what I really desired and giving me all the necessary tools that I needed to get to where I am and be who I am today and to be able to do what I'm doing today. All Our Kin, they not only say this is what they'll do, they physically do it to the point where they gave me my first aid kit. They gave me my first fire extinguisher. They really set you up to be successful, like Marina said, with everything you're going to need, all the training, the CPR classes, the business, accounting classes, 5-6-part series. They really want you to succeed and they set you up for that. And if you just come in 50%, you don't even need 100% sure. You just come in 50%. You don't even need to know much. They really will help you and help you to achieve your dreams. And that's what I'm living now. And I'm, again, always eternally grateful. And as someone said, when that happens, you're always happy to go back and to help. Like Jay was saying, you want to help do for others what was done for you. And what I would say should be at the forefront for next year would be equitable compensation. We, as educators, we are faced with low wages, with limited benefits, healthcare benefits, affordable benefits. We have families of our own, and we're trying to afford, our own families and our own children healthcare benefits. Also, because of the low compensation, we have high turnover, and it's hard for us to hire qualified educators and staff. So, and I have dealt with that with my 2 locations. So, definitely that should be at the forefront next. Equitable compensation for the great work we're doing, and for serving the families and the children we love to serve, but we do need to be compensated, as well.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. So with the few minutes that we have remaining, I want to turn towards a few of the questions that we've gotten from the audience, and also want to point out that we have answered a few of them along the way. So thank you, particularly Jessica, for doing that in the chat. But I want to maybe focus this question to Jade. So we have a question from Hallie Potter. What was the process of pushing for zoning reform in Connecticut like? She indicates that some zoning reforms have been successful in garnering bipartisan success, and she's wondering if that was the case here.
Yeah, thank you so much for the question. I will say we did face some opposition to different pieces of the bill. Folks ideologically just have certain beliefs that made it difficult for them to support certain components of the bill. I'll say the thing that was so wonderful about this year in particular and the approach that we took was that, again, it was really about that collaboration. We sat with certain members of the legislature who expressed concerns about the legislation. We wanted to hear from them. What don't you like? We think that this is something that not only is common sense, but it's probably one of a few bills that they were seeing that had no fiscal note, meaning it didn't cost anything. So we thought it was something that everyone could rally around. So there were definitely challenges. There were folks who were strongly opposed to the bill, but I think the thing that tied us all together was a commitment to expanding access to quality early care and education in the state, and specifically family and group child care. And so we had that connection point, and I think even though it was difficult because of some of the ideological differences, we were ultimately able to get it across the finish line because of just the overall importance of high quality early care and education.
Thank you. And I also want to point out that we have a question in the chat, Marina, that's completely in Spanish, and I cannot translate it, but if you could take a look at that one, since I know that you're proficient in Spanish, I really appreciate that. We do have a question from Mary Beth Bush in Ohio, and she's asking if All-Our-Kin has done any zoning work in Ohio, because she has a similar story of a provider there. And she's looking for a little guidance on where to start.
I can take this one. I was actually just chatting with Mary Beth. There is exciting zoning work happening around the country. And we certainly have lessons learned from our own expertise, as well as knowing of some other agencies that are working on this. I would suggest that you talk to the folks at All-Our-Kin that you're in touch with, because Mary Beth said she's part of one of our projects, which is amazing, and we'll see what we can do to help you. I'll also say that the Low Income Investment Fund has been doing some exciting work on this, as has the National Women's Law Center. So, maybe we can send a follow-up, pointing folks towards some resources specifically on zoning, since there's clearly a lot of interest in that specific issue.
Right. Thanks, Jessica. And we'll take this last question here from Ronald Jarrett. He's asking if there are state legislatures that you consider more aligned with your vision of supporting a thriving family child care system, and then which ones have kind of a further or longer way to go, and wondering if you're involved in helping in those states.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we have partners in 24 states. Sometimes those partners are state agencies, sometimes they're local nonprofits, sometimes they're provider-led associations. There are some states that we're working with an active partnership with the lead state agency, which is incredibly exciting. I'm going to give a shout out to our friends in Colorado, who I know are on this call. And we have some other partners like that as well. We also know that there are some governors and leaders in states around the country who right now, in the face of loss of federal funding, are stepping up and explicitly naming their commitment to childcare and putting their money where their mouth is. That would include New Mexico, that would include Minnesota, that would include Vermont. So there's an issue of funding, and then there's an issue of supporting family childcare specifically. And again, if you look at our map, if you look at some of the places where it's actually the state agency partnering with us, you'll know that that's a state that's really going all in on family childcare.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. So we are at the top of the hour, and I think we're going to have to end it there. I think, as these stories have shown right now in the post-COVID era, there is a significant spotlight on early childhood education, and parents, policymakers recognize how essential and challenging it is to find high-quality care for their children and how much stress has been placed on educators. I hope that you have learned some strategies for taking advantage of this important moment in time, and that you have been inspired to join and create movements of your own. Please go ahead and take a look at the trustforlearning.org website and the allourkin.org website and sign up for our newsletters and get in touch with us if you'd like to be part of our network. Thank you to both our panelists and to Jessica, and we hope to see you again on a future webinar. Thank you all.